Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. As fighting between Israel and Hezbollah escalates, the European Union says it will allocate more than 400 million euros in humanitarian aid across the Middle East, including significant support for Lebanon, whereas the Lebanese Ministry of Health reported since March 2nd, Israeli attacks have killed 850 people, including 107 children, and wounded more than 2,000. Hundreds of thousands of people have been reportedly displaced in just weeks. Now, aid groups are now trying to deliver food, shelter, and medical care while the situation continues to evolve. Now, for more analysis, we're now joined by Joanna Lenartowicz, Program Coordinator at Polish Humanitarian Action. Good to have you with us here on TVP World. Let's jump in on this. Ever since this started in Iran, with all of this is now escalated. This involves now, in particular, also southern Lebanon as Israel continues its operations there. Tell us, in terms of what we know right now, there are already many people dead, many are suffering. How terrible is that scale, and can we keep up with the humanitarian needs?
Good morning. As you mentioned, there are many fatalities already. Over 800,000 people were displaced in the last 2 weeks. So we observed this movement going north following the evacuation orders and the alerts about the bombardments. The needs are huge, enormous. What you mentioned, this 400 million, I think it would be, it's the scale of the needs in the Lebanon only. We know that everything is needed. There is a huge problem with the places to stay with such a big number of people going north. The strain on the infrastructure in the northern parts of Lebanon is huge. We know that people stay on the street because even though there was 600 collective shelters created, the estimations are that only 20% of displaced people will be accommodated in those shelters. So the rest of them tries to either rent a flat or a room, which is also very difficult. And some of them stay in the street. And we are now, it's March. In some parts of Lebanon, the temperatures during the night drops to 10 degrees. So there is many threats going with that. I mentioned the strain of the infrastructure. It also includes hospitals. We know that 47 primary health centers in the south and 5 hospitals were closed. And with the victims and fatalities of this conflict, even more healthcare than usual is needed.
Mm-hmm. I want to dig into a little bit of what you just said earlier. We talked about this 458 million euros coming from the European Union to this region, but specifically it was 100 million just for Lebanon. Now, what do those numbers tell us? I mean, how significant is this? And secondly, how fast could this kind of money get there? And what does it buy, basically? What does it tangibly give these people?
For sure, it won't cover 100% of the needs. We know that the needs are in all aspects. So hospitals, healthcare, which is very expensive, shelters, which is also, and places to stay, which is also very expensive. Food, people are buying out products from the markets quite fast. With this kind of money, it will be a significant assistance to those people, but it won't cover 100% of the needs for sure, because estimations say that over 1 million of people will be displaced, and even more are in need. Even more before that were in need already before the conflict, because since 2019, Lebanon is in a serious economic crisis. There is the highest number of refugees per capita, which also is a strain on the system. And refugees coming to Lebanon, they also don't get access to public services. So their situation is even their situation deteriorated after this war, obviously. But there were many problems that were already there before the conflict, and the humanitarian needs were huge back then.
Yeah, you mentioned it a little bit earlier. I want to ask you a bit further, Joanna, about the health system. You said already that's become under strain. We are hearing about attacks as well. I mean, that system already, as you said, Lebanon was not super functional even before all this set off. So how strained is the system going to be? I mean, there are UN agents warning attacks on healthcare facilities. What impact does that have to help treat civilians and the wounded?
It's hard to predict what will be impact in the coming weeks because the situation is pretty unpredictable and no one expected we will be in the place we are now 2 weeks ago. So it deteriorates pretty fast. The access to hospitals and primary health centers is not enough for the displaced population. And also there is problem with electricity cuts, with water access, with drought. Those are the problems that were there before already, but they get even worse in the current situation. So even though we have hospitals, if there are electricity cuts and lack of water, how are they going to operate? And then, like I mentioned, the fatalities of the conflict, direct fatalities of the conflict, and not only fatalities, but also people injured. Of course, they need healthcare. But there is another problem with such a big number of displaced population. The risk of some kind of sickness and epidemic, it rises. So those are the people who will need the healthcare as well. I mentioned problems with food access. People who are not malnourished will also need doctors to assist them. So this strain is caused not only by the closure of the hospitals and primary health centers, by the fatalities that we mentioned, which is over 700, and injured people, which is over 2,000. But also there is this very realistic threat that this mass displacement will cause some kind of epidemic.
And also, I mean, the one thing that's significant here, right, is that it's not just Lebanon. This is already a crisis that seems to be stretching resources thin. I mean, there's also now Syria, there's Gaza. So all these things compounded. Is it possible that agencies maybe are too stretched? Can they deal with all these crises simultaneously?
Every year there are estimations which say about the need which we have in the humanitarian sectors. Every country is analyzed how much money would we have to invest, to put there, to be able to deal with those needs. And every year we know that it's not enough. So there was not a situation that there wouldn't be this gap in the possible financing and in the needs. So, but this gap gets bigger in some part of the world, and this year, those last years, also 2025 was the year in which we saw, I think, the biggest number of conflicts. So wherever we look as humanitarians, there is a need of assistance, and we don't have such resources. So we know that we can only accommodate some of the needs, unfortunately.
Yeah, and also, I mean, if we're looking at the scale of this, I mean, it's just been a few weeks, and already we're talking about 850 people have been reportedly killed, thousands injured, or almost 1 million displaced. Let's just say, Joanna, that even if this does end tomorrow, which it doesn't look likely, how long would an aid agency, how long would you have to deal with this until it, let's say, returns, quote unquote, back to normal?
It's hard to say because after the war in 2024, we did not get enough time to get back to normal before this war. So it was over a year in which, and when you go into Lebanon, you actually see a lot of destroyed the infrastructure, and this destruction, some of them date back to the civil war, some of them to conflicts that followed with neighboring countries. So actually, this damage that is caused during every war is visible in Lebanon in the next decades. And when it comes to society, what is very important to say that And this year, it's even harder for the hosting communities to accept the people fleeing from the south. We hear that there is like a lot of inner tension between those communities. So people are really tired, and it takes decades to rebuild infrastructure. And when it comes to psychological impact, it takes. I think it's safe to say that it doesn't take much less time. So also psychological first aid is really needed, and it's also lacking.
And then also, I mean, let's talk also about the risk of this. I mean, even UN peacekeepers near the blue line there in Lebanon are coming under fire. I mean, this is also a great deal of risk to aid agencies. But I just want to ask you, before we close specifically, what your organization, what Polish Humanitarian Action is doing, and if those people are watching, what can they do to help?
We are present in Lebanon since 2020, after the blast in the port, and we always partner up with local organizations who fully implement the projects on the ground. They know what is necessary. Most of the time, we try to implement developmental programs that are aimed at solving unemployment issues in some communities. But in times like this, we plan emergencies. In 2024, we conducted emergency in Tripoli. This year, we are trying to secure funds to conduct shelter emergency in Tripoli as well, so in the north, which is a destination of the people fleeing from the south. So we are planning to conduct distribution of the items that are necessary to survive in the current conditions, because the people who are fleeing from the south, they quite often don't take much with them. So that is what we do. Usually we try to conduct some developmental programs, but in times like this, we always look for humanitarian assistance that we can implement. Of course, partnering up with our local organizations who know best what they need.
Yeah, but at the same time, as we said, whoever is there, if it's aid agencies, if it's from people you work with, it's an immense amount of risk at the moment. There's also that UN Security Council meeting just later on Tuesday, and we'll see how that develops. But look, thank you so much for all that. Talking about this ongoing crisis there in this region, Joanna Lenartowicz from the Polish Humanitarian Action organization, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more news and commentary. Goodbye.